Good afternoon. My name is Karen Stone, and I'm English, and I run the theatres of Magdeburg, which is in Germany, which is a typical German city situation with several theatres and an ensemble. I was just started to talk about this just to say that how do I get there? Well, I studied at the French Lycée in London and Rome. I was brought up with 3 languages. I fell in love with music and opera at an early age. And then when I finished school, it was a big decision whether to go to university or to College of Music. I decided to go to College of Music to have the opportunity to make music with other people. So I went to the Royal Academy of Music, having been a junior exhibitioner at the Royal College of Music. I had the great joy of being at the Royal Academy of Music with some fantastic colleagues. Amongst others, I started in the same year as Sir Simon Rattle, so a very high standard. After having done 3 years at the Royal Academy of Music, I then moved to Rome, where I went to the Santa Cecilia, the Conservatorio di Santa Cecilia, where I did the opera studio. So as I'm sure you can see now, the start of my career was quite determined to be a pianist or a singer. And I really enjoyed doing that. I came back to England and did a number of jobs, as we all do, trying to find the first main career step. And my main career step then happened when I was 25. I auditioned in Germany, and I got a job in a small provincial company as a singer. And from there, I learned German in Germany, on the hoof, as we say in English. And I then went to Frankfurt. And in my Frankfurt opera, I discovered the extraordinary interest and joy of stage directing and what you can make out of a production, not just the singing and the music, but also the visual and analytical aspect of the opera. So at this stage, I decided it was a much more interesting career for me, and I went to become an assistant director in a theatre in the southern part of Germany, in Freiburg, which was my start as an assistant director. From Freiburg, in Freiburg im Breisgau, I was able to do my first productions as a director, small productions. And from there, I then went as an assistant director to the English National Opera. And from there, I went as a resident producer to the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden. Obviously, the languages that I have were an advantage. So that was really, for me, the transition to the directing. From Covent Garden, I was then offered a job at the Bavarian State Opera in Germany as a head of productions. And at that time in Munich, the State Opera, there were 53 operas in each season in repertoire. So this meant an enormous amount of revivals, directing, co-productions, and basically being responsible for around 10 operas yourself. And that, in a sense, became almost like running a small opera company. And at that point, I decided that I would like to get more involved in the arts administration side of things. I think when you are directing a show, you realize where all the problems are, and you think, those idiots upstairs, I'm sure I can do it much better. So, of course, needless to say, the attraction and the lure comes of moving upstairs. And one of the directors that I met in Munich, Günther Kremer, had been a very famous drama theatre director who was taking over a Generalintendanz, joining together the opera and the drama theatre in Cologne. And he was looking for a team, and he asked me if I would like to come and run the opera studio and be deputy director of opera. This was the exact opportunity I was looking for, and I happily accepted it. And that was in 1995. I barely had arrived before a major argument broke out between Günther Kremer and his opera director, who resigned on the spot, so I found myself unexpectedly raising myself to the high levels of being opera director of the Cologne Opera. Cologne Opera was at that time the 4th largest opera company in Germany, and I had a budget for guests and directors of 12 million marks, which is 6 million euros. This is a huge budget to be responsible for, and also working with conductors like Donald Runnels and people who had a high level of expectation. So that was my kind of baptism by fire, if you like. And from there I decided, okay, what's better even being an opera director? It's being the big cheese. So I applied for the job of being general manager of the theatres in Graz, Austria. And unbelievably, I think it's because there was a candidate supported by the socialists and there was a candidate supported by the conservatives, and I was the dark horse in the middle, and I eventually won with a nose ahead. Of course, the thing is that Graz, very much like Magdeburg today, and I'm sure many of you know this system, this was a theatre with 600 employees, with a drama theatre, an opera theatre, a studio theatre, 95 in the orchestra, 60 in the chorus, a large ensemble, and a total annual budget of 30 million euros. Of course, we are never exempt from political changes and upheavals, and I had barely started, and the extreme right wing came into power in Austria, well, came into power regionally in Austria, and they decided that they would like to disband my extraordinary empire of the general intendants and break it up into 5 separate units. This did not suit me at all, because I loved the fact of being able to thematically link the drama theatre with the music theatre in order to expand audience, in order to create an artistic profile. And so in rather depressed state, I went to my office one day thinking, what am I doing here? And there was an email from a headhunter in America saying, the Dallas Opera is looking for a new general manager, and they're building a new opera house to be designed by the world-famous architect Lord Foster. Would you be interested in coming to interview? Well, you know, a girl can't resist a nice invitation. So I went to Dallas, and it was a good way of avoiding the political shenanigans, the political games playing in Austria. So I found myself in Dallas and working very hard together with Lord Foster and his team on building a new opera house. I enjoyed that thoroughly for 5 years. Of course, enormously different situation. You have a huge barn of an opera house, a situation where you have a very small core employee base, about 38 people, which expanded to about 200 during the season, but people on part-time contracts. Very different situation, but obviously hiring in people at a very high level, which also has its pleasures. However, my heart had always lain back in the ensemble theatre, in discovering and developing new young talent, and I thoroughly missed it. And so I decided, oh brave soul, at not such a young age, that I would not renew my contract in Dallas and come back to Europe and look for another company where I could again work with and develop young talent. Amongst the young talent that over the years I was able to discover and develop, and I'd like to mention a couple of them, in my first year in Cologne, we engaged the famous singer Nina Stemmer from Sweden, who is now the most important Wagner singer in Bayreuth, the Metropolitan Opera, and everywhere. I also, from a competition on which I was the jury, I discovered a young Korean baritone named Samuel Yoon, who I brought to Cologne because I thought he should sing German repertoire, which he was rather reluctant to do. But last summer, I have to say with great pleasure, he sang the title role in The Flying Dutchman at the Wagner Festival in Bayreuth. I also found a young conductor when I was in Graz who was 25 years old and made him my music director. His name is Philippe Jordan, and he is now currently the music director of the Paris Opera. 3 of my ensemble in Graz are now employed in the Vienna State Opera in the ensemble. So this is when I say this is a passion of mine. I love doing it. So I was looking for that opportunity. Magdeburg was looking for a general manager. Magdeburg is a city of 250,000. We have a theatre with 450 employees. We have an opera theatre which seats 700. We have a drama theatre which seats 250, a small studio theatre for 100 people. We do around a total, if you add all the additional colloquiums, talks, presentations, little concerts, around 800 performances a year, and we sold around 160,000 tickets, which we consider not bad in a city of 250,000 people. So that's the situation I'm at the moment, and again, I've got my my playground with the young talent. And I have to say that since I've been now in Magdeburg, a young Turkish baritone that I discovered from a competition, next year he's moving to the Hamburg State Opera, where he'll be singing all the major roles. So I feel satisfied that I'm doing my best to develop the next generation of artists. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm also, the great joy for me, I have to say, is not just being the administrator and the artistic director, but I also like directing myself. And I have directed in South America and in New Zealand and in America. And I have also directed in Finland at the Southern Linnau Opera Festival. I have just directed Così fan tutte in Magdeburg, which is a co-production with Nice, where we'll be having the premiere in February. So this I find a very good thing for me, because it's the best way of really understanding my theatre and getting contact with all the people who are working there. We build sets and costumes and wigs and makeup, and I really, this way, can get a contact with everything that's happening and see where there are problems and where things need to be improved. Because often, sitting in an ivory tower of a general manager's office, you lose contact with reality and every day. Just as I think we all feel that it would be jolly good if the politicians of our country occasionally got on the tram and experienced what it was like in the rush hour, so rather should a general manager, I think, always have contact with the everyday running of a company. Anyway, that's a little bit about my background and how I have got to Magdeburg. And now I'd like to tell you a bit about my theatre. Have we managed to? Okay. If we turn off a bit of light, do you think we'll see that better? Is there a main light switch? Somewhere? Here? Where is it? There. Let's see what happens. No? Ooh, that's even more. Is that better? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to say that whenever I do a PowerPoint presentation, I always put pictures of our artistic product between the slides, because I think it's very important that we don't just talk about politics and money and organization, but we all remember always why we do our job, and we do it to put people on stage and to enchant our audience. So that's why you will always be seeing between your slides pictures of various productions that we have done in Magdeburg, the drama theatre on the right and music theatre on the left. So is this going to work? Yes. Right, so that's another play. So Theatre Magdeburg is a repertory theatre which performs opera, operetta, musical, ballet, drama, symphony concerts, 10 of those a year. Young People's Theatre. We have the largest young people's theatre club in the whole of Germany, with around 300 kids making their own theatre under our guidance. We have huge theatre education projects and many complementary programs, which include pre- and post-performance talks, late-night cabaret and concert, chamber music, and jazz evenings. So we try and have an event every single day, apart from the 6 weeks that were closed in the summer, so that no one in Magdeburg can say, oh, I'm bored this evening, pity there's nothing on in the theatre. We don't want to lose that person. That was our West Side Story. The numbers: 450 permanent employees, of which 82 in the orchestra, 38 in the chorus, 66 in the category of principal actors, dancers, and singers. Our annual budget is 28 million euros, of which 13% is income coming from ticket sales and 87% from state subsidy by the city of Magdeburg and the region of Saxony-Anhalt. Now, if I gave those figures to a theatre in America, they would be very shocked. The budget for us in Dallas would have read that 50% of the income comes from ticket sales and 50% comes from sponsors and donors, and 0.01% comes from state subsidy. So these figures read very differently in different countries. But of course, as I'm sure you're all highly aware, the taxation structure varies also tremendously in these countries. In Texas, there is no income tax. There is a state income tax, but there isn't, I mean, a national income tax, but there is no state of Texas income tax. However, there is a sales tax, more or less like VAT that we have. And so people have to donate or they will get killed by the taxman. So it's a very different game. 13% income from ticket sales sounds low. I would have to say that generally speaking in Germany, the average is 16%, actually almost going on for 17% now. However, Magdeburg is a city that was in the old German Democratic Republic. And after the fall of the wall, these theatres have struggled over the past 25 years to somehow reach the levels of the West German theatres economically. So I will come back to this 13% shortly. The large subsidy is really still back to the idea that the German theatre has, which is that the theatres, like the museums, like the swimming pools, belong to the infrastructure of a city. And so it's a fundamental philosophy that this country has, which is why, and as I'm sure you're all aware, there are so many permanent theatres in Germany, with over 90 cities in Germany that have permanent theatre and opera companies. So that's an example of our youth theatre doing a production in our museum. They were talking about the Holy Grail, and we did this as a production together with the museum. For those of you who don't know anything about Magdeburg, and I'm sure that's most of you, Magdeburg was, in the 10th century, over 1,000 years ago, the capital of the Holy Roman Empire under Otto the Great. And it was a very important city, and it was an important city also because in the 13th century, in the 12th century, it developed a thing called the Magdeburger Recht, which are the city laws of Magdeburg. This was a great step towards democratic evolution of laws. It was so important that it was taken on by over 100 cities in the east, including Brno, took the Magdeburg city laws as the basis for their own city laws. So, the last 5 years I've been general manager. Up until when I took over the theatre, ticket sales were only 8% of the budget. If you remember, they're now 13%. Up until 5 years ago, the staff were forced to accept a voluntary reduction in salary to compensate for the shortfall in the budget. They are now receiving their full salary on the same payment scale as the Western German opera companies. How did we improve the situation? Don Giovanni, my favorite opera. Well, we did it by increasing the amount of premieres in the autumn so that we had a large amount of productions on offer to a very wide audience to come to the theatre. We did our premieres closer together from September to mid-November so that we could just do performances from the period mid-November to the end of December, which is the best time for selling performances. December alone, in most theatres you will find, will produce 3 times the amount of income from ticket sales to the next best month. And that not just in Germany, but in America, in England, and in most countries. That is the time, if people go to the theatre once a year, that's when they go to the theatre. So it's important that you're not closing your theatre for rehearsals at the time that the audience wishes to come to see a performance. We also increased looking for co-productions. We are very, very energetic members of Opera Europa. We are doing this last week. Our co-production of Don Giovanni was Madame Butterfly opened in Oviedo in Spain, with whom we've also done a Don Giovanni, and they're doing a revival of our Don Giovanni in January. We are doing a co-production Rosenkavalier with Welsh National Opera, our Così fan tutte with Nice, and so on and so forth. This brings in additional income for the theatre. We reviewed our ticket prices. We had a very sensitive ticket price in what was East Germany, with people very unwilling to give out money. but we've slowly managed to increase our revenue by raising ticket sales, but, and very importantly, keeping the lowest price point as low as it always was, so that the people who are at the lower edge of society do not feel they cannot come into the theatre. Our cheapest ticket, therefore, costs the same as a packet of cigarettes. A major factor, and that's one that I've learned over the years, has been reducing the dependence on outside contractors. What does this mean? It means, for example, that when you're doing a new production, making sure that you plan well in advance, that you speak to your guest director and your guest team, the people who are doing the sets and the costumes, and that you get them to deliver the drawings and the technical drawings early enough so that you can plan them in your workshops. Under my predecessor, there were, in some years, up to 150,000 euros in outside contracting for building sets and costumes. We have reduced that to virtually zero. So that is money that is not being spent, which did not need to be spent, and is just up to you as a general manager, talking to your teams and getting them to deliver their concept early enough that you can plan it without overtime and you can plan it in your workshops. It's not always easy, particularly not in the drama theatre, because they tend to think much later, but it is something that is well worth acting on. Another area of outside contractors, we used to have a security company running the stage door. It seemed to me unnecessary and the costs were rising every year. So I looked into the possibility of putting in a mechanical entrance where people had a microchip. This cost us a small investment at the beginning, but it has saved us, with our security company, around 50 to 60,000 euros a year in less personnel costs. Again, these are marvelous ways of saving money so that you do not have to reduce your artistic budgets, and at the same time, they help you keep a lean, mean machine. Selection of repertoire. It's, again, a very important thing. As a general manager, yes, I love doing Wozzeck next to Arabella with a little bit of Handel, but we have to be realistic. A huge part of the job of general manager is analyzing the statistics of ticket sales over the past 5 to 10 years to understand what is your audience interested in seeing. It doesn't mean that you can't take risks. You should take risks, because your most interested audience is often the ones who want to come to the more unusual pieces. But at the same time, you need to offer something for the wide public. So the only way you can get that information is by looking at the actual statistics of ticket sales. I'm an absolute enemy of people sitting there and saying, well, we've heard, and Mrs. Jones said the other day that she didn't like the cost, and that's why people aren't coming. Anecdote is not data. So, and 5 anecdotes do not make data. You need to really have metrics in place to understand what are people coming to, how much does it cost, what's the frequency, do I sell more tickets on a Sunday before Christmas at a 4 o'clock performance, a 6 o'clock performance, or a 7:30 performance? This information cannot be done through hearsay and anecdote, but only through data. And so you need to have a good system for collecting that data and regularly analyzing it. What do you think is the first thing that I do every morning when I wake up? I go straight away online and I look at what our ticket sales are for that evening's performance and for the next week, because that is the most crucial thing. If I want to be able to have the money to spend on the art and the side of it, I have to be responsible for the other aspects of my business as well. Motivating employees to cope with temporary staff shortages. Well, you know, this is not a small thing. We save a huge amount of money as well, because when someone's pregnant or they have to go to hospital because they've broken a leg, you know, not immediately thinking we have to hire someone for 3 months, but speaking to the other people in a department and saying to them, how do you think we can manage? What can we do? Can we separate it? Anything that you can do to avoid temporary additional costs saves the company money, but you, as a general manager, have to be involved in talking to the people in these departments and motivating them to feel we've really helped this company not have a financial crisis. And, possibly most importantly, efficient planning by company management, scheduling rehearsals, scheduling delivery of costumes and everything, so that we don't go into overtime, so we don't go into overtime with the chorus, so that we don't have crisis meetings. I hate crisis meetings. And they used to be absolutely weekly events in the theatre. I think we had one crisis meeting last year. And that is really down to having a planning department that knows what they're doing, when they're doing, and scheduling properly, to avoid additional costs later on with the sudden, oh my God, we need an extra 5 hours lighting. Can we bring in everybody until 3 o'clock in the morning? And that's going to cost us another 6,000 in overtime. These are really bad situations that you should not let yourself get into unless Ebola breaks out. Okay, that was our Orpheus in the underworld. I rather like that. That was Jupiter leaving the heights of Mount Olympus and going down to hell. Contracts and salaries. I was asked to talk to you a little bit about that. Our legal status. Theater Magdeburg is what they call in Germany an Eigenbetrieb. This means that although the city of Magdeburg is an owner, as general manager, I am the CEO, the chief executive officer, as well as the artistic director, and my signature is required on all documents and contracts affecting the theatre to make them legally valid. The artistic contracts, which include some of the management contracts, are organized under the Deutsche Bühnenverein, that's the German Theatre Association, NV Solo, that's normal contract solo, and the Deutsche Orchesterverein, that's the German Orchestra Association. All non-artistic personnel fall under the contracts of TVÖD, that's Tarifvertrag der öffentliche Dienst. That means it's really like public worker sector contracts. Salary increases, therefore, in these sections of Deutsche Bühnenverein, Deutsche Orchesterverein and TVÖD are negotiated on a national level. So we have very little say in that, unfortunately. When I was in Dallas, I had to negotiate with 6 different unions, including the Teamsters Union, which I don't know if any of you know the history of America, but the Teamsters Union was the one that used to had a mafia boss called Hoffman, and they used to go around murdering people and burying them. It was rather intimidating negotiating with them, I can tell you. Anyway, our basic salaries, ballet dancers, poor darlings, always earn the least, between about 1,800 and 2,500 euros a month. Our chorus earns between 2.2 to 3,000 euros a month. Our actors and singers earn between 1.8 to 3,500 euros. Our orchestra, which is categorized in Germany as a B+ orchestra, which is the second tier under the A orchestra, they earn between 3,000 and 5,000 euros. Of course, in every orchestra around the world, there are things like the concertmaster position or solo horn players who have individually negotiated contracts as soloists. Our orchestra does around 330 services per season. Artistic personnel get an additional yearly payment, which is approximately 70% of a month's salary. That's kind of like a holiday bonus. They also get 6 weeks paid holiday. So 6 weeks paid holiday plus another month's salary is 2.5 months on top of what they're earning monthly. The artistic personnel contribute to an additional pension in Germany, and it's a pension insurance scheme, which is the Bavarian Insurance Company, and contributions are matched by the theatre. Currently, on retirement, this fund pays out an annual 16% on top of the national insurance scheme. So people leave a lifetime of working in the German theatre with a reasonable prospects at a reasonable retirement. And for dancers, it will pay for them to retrain when the end of their career comes. For foreigners, it can give them a lump sum when they leave the country. So that's the kind of financial contractual background to the theatre. See, our lovely ballet. We did a very nice modern ballet. One of my great joys of the ensemble theatre is that we did a ballet called Heilig, Holy, and of course we had the entire chorus and the orchestra and the ballet and soloist singers all singing and dancing. It's quite marvelous. Right, sorry. I talked about planning of the individual scheduling things, but also planning a season, which is obviously incredibly important financially. And I think it boils down to two main aims: the artistic aims, your vision, artistic vision for your company, and keeping within the parameters of the budget. These two things are rather like doing the splits sometimes, and you think, how can I join them together? But that is the important part of being in arts administration. That's our orchestra. So, I'll leave this up for a little while I talk about this. I'll talk to you a bit about how I hate anecdotes and I like data. And one of the great joys is this organization called the Deutsche Bühnenverein, the German Theatre Association, is that they gather statistics from Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And they produce tables at the end of the year of telling you how many performances, what was the most visited productions. So a very important basis, I think, for making repertory selections is actually this table. So on the left-hand side, we have the list of the top 20 operas as they are performed in Germany and sell the most tickets. And on the right, the top 20 operettas. I've marked these with colors that, in fact, everything that's in blue is what we've been doing since I've been there, of that top 20 list. In red are the pieces that were done by my predecessor, which I need a while to pause before I can redo them. We generally tend to say in a German repertory house that it's a very good thing if you leave 10 years between new productions of a particular opera, so that your subscribers don't feel, oh my God, it's Bohème again, or whatever. And the green titles are the titles which are in the top 20 list but haven't been performed and are in a reasonable distance that allow me to start thinking about doing new productions again. As you can see, it's not, I don't think, a big surprise to find out that the Magic Flute, Aida, Hansel and Gretel, Bohème, Traviata, Carmen, Tosca, Figaro, Barber, Giovanni are all in that top list. I think it's possibly because we're in Germany, we suddenly see at position 20 Salome, which I think is exciting, or Der Freischütze, so not every title is by Puccini. And on the right-hand side, what we see here, though, I think is very interesting, is that even in Germany, there's a decreasing amount of performances of operetta. And here we have the plays, exactly the same situation. I don't think, again, it would be any surprise for you to see that in number one favored position for performances is Goethe's Faust in Germany. But as you can see, Shakespeare, good old Shakespeare, appears quite a few times on that top 20 list, but probably in every country in the world. Oh, I am English and I am proud. And on the left-hand side and the right-hand side are the top 20 musicals. So again, in our theatre, we do, in our main stage at the Opera House, we do 9 premieres a year. 5 operas, 1 operetta, 1 musical, and 2 ballets. We also do an open-air production in the summer of a musical. We also have our own band in the drama theatre. So, all of this means we come around to scheduling. I like to have a strong start in the autumn. So this year, it's been Lohengrin in the music theatre, Spur der Steine and Iphigenia in the drama theatre, again in music theatre, then The Merry Widow and Così fan tutte, the ballet with Nutcracker. We try and do some nice classic, solid, good pieces in the winter. So we've got in the drama theatre Romeo and Juliet, sorry, Julia because it's German, and then we're doing the musical Crazy for You and Puccini's La Bohème in music theatre. At the end of the season, we like to do pieces that we will be immediately able to revive at the beginning of the following season. So we've got Sleeping Beauty in the ballet, the Wildschütz in the opera, and Three Sisters by Chekhov in the drama theatre. Our open musical is Rocky Horror. We like to do things for the sort of the fans. So that's in the ballet Blood Wedding and Lorca and the Studio Dance Project. And Fat Men in Skirts in the drama theatre. That we're doing the cult production in the drama theatre of Alice, which is sort of rock musical. And we also try and find some new and interesting titles to interest the wider audience from the region and from the whole of Germany, and to get more press attention. So this year we're doing, now I refuse to read this title, but it's called The Bride of Messina, and it's an opera by Zdeněk Fibiš, which has never been performed outside the Czech Republic. We are the first. So it's a great piece. We're looking forward to doing it very much. And in fact, while I've been working here, is speaking to some of the colleagues from other theatres inside the Czech Republic to see if we can't make this a co-production or guest, because after all, you know, hey, you all got to be proud of Fibiš. We're doing then another interesting project for us was that we are, Theater Magdeburg is a co-commissioner and co-producer of a world premiere this year, and that is the new Philip Glass opera based on Kafka's The Trial. And this had its world premiere last month at Covent Garden in the small theatre, and will have its first European production in Magdeburg in April. Of course, it's a great honor for us to be able to do a work with Philip Glass's as a world premiere. This is exciting. And then we're doing a very strange German book, which is called The Nazi and the Hairdresser. I'm not quite sure what that's going to be, but everybody's already quite up in arms about it. And then for our young audiences, we've got The Little Prince, The Petit Prince, the Saint-Exupéry. We've got a little opera called Zorro Chases the Carmen Treasure, which brings together music from every opera you've ever heard of. We've got a fairy story at Christmas, which is Snow White. We're doing a children's opera project, which we've done before, which this one is Nabucco. This is a reduced version of the opera with reduced orchestra. And we go into the schools, and the kids learn the choruses, and the kids make props so that they don't just sit passively in the audience, they join in. We chose Nabucco because we think that for the teachers it's a biblical story, so that it's easy for them to incorporate that in the curriculum, and also because we feel very strongly that the chorus of the slaves of Nabucco belongs to world heritage of music, and everybody needs to learn, I think, Verdi's slave chorus from Nabucco. And then, of course, Emile and the detectives as well. So that's kind of, so all of that information all comes out at the end in that. And, you know, guess what? It doesn't always work out the way you think. So that was our ballet, which was an unexpected success. It was sort of based a bit on a romantic view of the past in Magdeburg, and it just sold out completely. It was really quite beautiful. And this is a last picture that I'm putting up, and that was a photograph from our Turn of the Screw. The girl singing that, Noah Danon, is in the ensemble. She's an Israeli singer, and she had such success with this that they took her back in Tel Aviv to sing it as a guest, the governess in the Turn of the Screw. And she's guested in many other theatres, including in Zemlinsky, in Lübeck last season. And she's exactly the sort of person that I like having in the ensemble. She came to us straight out of College of Music, and she's developing into a really, truly great singer and a great actress as well. And of course, in this piece, as you all know, there's a young boy who has to sing Miles, and that I found very exciting because, of course, needless to say, there's nothing to interest children in an audience like seeing a child on stage. You know, it really attracts them because they see themselves. So, my dears, there you are. That's the end, a little bit about the background of Theater Magdeburg. And what I'd now like to do is turn on the lights and get you to pull your chairs around into little groups. And I want to give you some tasks so that we can talk about it. So would you like to make little circles with 5 people in your groups? And then I will come and give you some tasks. No exceptions, no exceptions. Not more than 5, please. So if you get to 5, move into another group, please. Okay, so put yourselves into a nice little circle, please. No passengers. Okay, so in this section, what we're going to do is we're just going to I want to give you a little task to talk about and see if you can sort of think up what are your solutions, and then we'll move some people around the room into the other groups, and we'll just carry on talking, and then I'd like to hear what you come up with as ideas afterwards. So, I'm going to give you the task of thinking that you're taking over a theatre just after an election, and you are suspecting that there are going to be heavy government cuts in the next 6 months. Okay? So, task to you all is to sit there and start working out amongst yourself, what are your important tasks to do to be prepared for those eventual problems? Do you understand the question? So that you sit there and you think, okay, I'm now been made the artistic director or the chief executive officer or the general manager of my company. There's been an election. A new party's coming in. We suspect we're going to be cut. What can I do in the 6 months up to that election that's going to put us in a strong position and make us prepared for the future? So start talking amongst yourselves, and I shall come round the room and join you. So just start talking amongst yourselves. Okay, can I have my speakers please stand up for a moment, please? And a delegated speaker at each table. Who's the delegated speaker? Okay, please stand up. Please, whoever delegated. Okay, now, I'd like you please to all stay at your tables and like everybody else to change around and move to another table. Okay, move. This is not just in the meeting, but we've got politicians out there who don't know who they are. I'd like you now to carry on this conversation, but really start thinking about what can we do to move out, where is our contact base, how are we actually approaching this change in these politicians, and what do we have to do? Can we have two piece groups here? I really don't want 10 people together. This is too, okay, I'll do it. Please, can you turn around to this group, please? There we are. You there. Right, there we are. So, okay. I'll give you nice another 5 minutes here.
stop you all again now for 2 seconds, because I'm going to ask you to move again. I've been hearing some very interesting things. I think one of the tables, and I'd like you now to, when we move, to really examine this point. One was talking about the financial impact of culture. Many politicians particularly think that the theatre is a drain on the economy. Tax money is washed away in culture. And I think that it's one of the most important things, and I can only advise you enough to look at, for example, the financial impact on the city of Glasgow, that was capital of culture in 1990. It was the first city that was non-cultural, as it were, to become capital of culture. And there was a study done by, I think, Deloitte 2 years ago, 23 years after, what the financial impact is. That often politicians need to understand we're not a drain, but we're a gain. And the other thing that was also interesting was, someone was saying, is invite them. Well, you know what? Inviting someone who's never been to the opera to come and sit through Lohengrin is not always going to be. The secretary will say, I'm terribly sorry, but Mr. So-and-so is busy on this evening. So I'd also like you to consider is, what are the other ways of getting close to these people? What are the ideas that come into your mind, how to get them into the theatre? Maybe for other events or whatever it is, so that there is an opportunity to meet them face to face. It gets harder for people to say no to you. Okay, the chief leaders, stay in your chairs. Everybody move again. Please move to different tables, to different rooms. I can keep those thoughts there. Okay, now everybody, would you all please go back to your original groups?
Okay, we're going to kind of go back to sit. And when you're back in your groups, Right, now you're back in your original groups. What I'd like you to do, please, is I'd just like you to spend a couple of minutes just exchanging the information about your conversations at the other table, and that your group speaker, then each one of you, I'll be expecting to stand up and mention a couple of points. So it's about saving money, politicians, future planning, whatever, so that you've just exchanged some of that information you've been gathering in these little short, very short groups, and see what you what your thoughts at the end are, and what are your most important points that you'd like to talk and raise in this group. Okay, so go to it for a couple of minutes, go through those other experiences and make your own little list of the important points. Okay, I think we're ready to hear some of these thoughts that are coming out of the group. If we could start at the back and then work round in a clockwise direction, and if our little group leaders could just give us a couple of points that you felt have emerged as very strong ideas out of your various groups.
We have been speaking about the theater, which has 3 ensembles: opera, drama, and ballet. And we will do these things. Firstly, we'll try to find some new financial sources, and then we'll try to use our artists to make new productions, make some new co-productions, maybe make some international tour to gain money for our budgets. Maybe important things could be to make some events for decision makers, for politicians, for managers of big firms, to find some new sponsors, new patrons, or to find some new products, some new events for children or for new audience groups.
Very good. Can I just ask you to be a bit specific when you say looking for new forms of funding? Sounds good, but specifically, did you come to any thoughts about what those new forms of funding could be?
There are some methods now, cross-funding on something like this. Maybe we can find some big partner, which could be some international firm, not here in Brno, but which has a big brand worldwide, and to connect our productions or our projects with them. To make some.
I'd like to just add then, just making a comment on that. When I was in Cologne as the opera director, we managed to get a very good sponsorship deal with Yakult. Yakult, I don't know, do you know this product? It's a small sort of bio yogurt drink, which is sold over all of Europe nowadays, but they were trying to break into the European market. We had a contact to them, and we got them to build and sponsor a children's theatre inside the opera house, because they wanted, through the connection with the opera, and particularly children, they could immediately gain respectability. And that was very important to them. So the important thing is understanding what does such a company want and trying to fulfill their ambitions. Okay? Good. Can we move on to the next group, please? What are your thoughts?
So the first task was how we start to save the money. So we were thinking about to start to do more co-production, depends if we've done any before, so to do it probably more, to get involved probably some volunteers, and to get, or to try to have a choir and orchestra external, if it's possible. That we had this from yesterday presentation. So, and probably thinking about if we can earn money differently to go on tour. And as for the trying to get government involved, we were thinking about doing some events, special events, when we invite these people to the theater, so they experience the theater from inside, and to definitely not to put them to the theater to see the whole show, but to do some presentation, catering. And so they invite as many important people, so they know that they will meet another important people. I think it's important for them to, and to meet artists. And so I think that's it. Do we have something else?
I think you've just raised two very important points. One is the chance of meeting the artists, which for many people is exotic. We do it every day, and we forget how attractive it is to come on stage, to see what's actually what's going on. What was your point just before that? Because I've just sort of suddenly forgotten.
To make this so they feel it's extraordinary experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is, I mean, in an everyday world, we can offer that special experience, and we mustn't undervalue it at all, how different it is. And certainly when I was in America, it would always amaze me that some mega multimillionaire, I mean, we had one who bought his own, he wanted to go to the White Nights Festival in St. Petersburg, and so he bought a Boeing 737 and had it fitted out with bedrooms and showers so that he could take his friends to St. Petersburg. But if you gave him the chance of walking backstage, he was like a little child with large eyes. So there you are. So I think that that's an important point. Good. Can we move on to the next group?
I'm going to focus on the second and the third part. We talked a lot about the how we're going to interact with the people we are going to make them into giving us money, and therefore the politicians. And we talked a lot about the data, that we have to know everything about them. And I'm not just talking about researching them on the internet, but talking to people who already met them and searching everything about them. And therefore getting them into the theater by using their children or something like that, and making them in the contact with theater, so they would come, so they wouldn't come to our play, but they will come to see their children.
Operas with children in them are particularly successful. When I was at the Royal Academy of Music as a student, we did Ravel's opera L'Enfant et les Sortilèges, and very sensibly the lady who was choreographing it brought her ballet school with her, and amongst the children there were the children of Princess Margaret. So we had the entire royal family coming to the production. I can't tell you how much good it did for the Royal Academy of Music. Use those little monsters. Anything else?
Also, they said that we should focus on the basic needs of humans, so and they will give them food and drinks and stuff, and everyone likes that. On some free road or something.
You'd sometimes think that politicians had enough free meals. I don't think there is such a thing as enough free meals. Good, excellent. Come on, move around to the next group.
We decided not to cut anything. We want to raise money to live it like before. So first, we should tell the people and politicians and so on what is impact of cutting. So it's very bad for financial situation in a city, in a country, because the cutting means raising unemployment. And we are national treasure, and everyone should know it, and we are national heritage, so we should tell it. And then the offerings, what we can offer to people in there. So we can offer them some seats, some VIP things, and I agree we should use their kids. And we should make some plans how to raise stakeholders. So we should know who is around, which companies and which people, and we should use some personal attitude for them. So try to know them.
Thank you very much. I think that's very, I like this point about the positive impact of the finances. You know, a theatre gets this money, but it doesn't get exported to the Caribbean in secret bank accounts. The money gets spent by people in their local shops. It gets spent by local companies. It invests in the community. This is seed money. This taxation money gets ploughed straight back into the community, and more tax is paid from that, and more businesses. This is an important argument with some politicians. I also, however, agree don't immediately assume you can give in. If you give in and make it easy, they'll want you to cut more. So I think start off by saying we are a luxury that you can afford and you need to afford. I think that's a good argument. Can we have our last group?
With the people who was here, we speak about show the economic impacts to the politics and the people who will work with us. And then we speak, or we try to find some way how to interest the people from politics side through some royal box or some packages, and also to meet the artists and I think all was said here. So.
Okay, I'd just like to say one thing. I think that sometimes there are situations where people want VIP treatment. They love it. And there are places they don't want it. I mean, I would have to say in Magdeburg, as an East German city, they don't want it. They feel guilty about it. What I do, and I recommend to everybody is, and think about this, is letting your company get involved in some big charitable concert. The reason I say this is it's very easy. If you go out and you're trying to raise money for children, I don't mean this as an exploitative way. First of all, I actually do a lot of voluntary work myself, so I do believe in the charities that I give money to. But if you make that a part of your company, that once a year you do a UNICEF concert or a concert for sick children or whatever, you can easily get a politician to be the chair of that appeal. And when you do your big concert, you can get these people to come into the theatre, and with a bit of luck and with an introduction to your singers or dancers or whatever in your mixed program, you have a chance maybe of winning them to come again to maybe a premiere or a special event or whatever. It's certainly, and also they then feel the worst thing is for them to think, oh my God, it's the theatre with outstretched hand again. And so this idea of how are we partners of the politicians, how are we partners of the city, how are we supporting the aims of the politicians in our region to make their city successful? These are all elements. And how are we supporting the society around us? We have art, we have beauty, we can help the less advantaged, children in schools who don't have so much opportunities. One of the things that I brought in Magdeburg, was I allowed people to actually sponsor children from poor schools to come to the Christmas fairy tale. And so what they did was, and we did this in Dallas as well, which is where I started it, is that people bought like a painted Christmas tree ball, and on it was 3 tickets. And these were all hung at the box office. And when people came to buy tickets, they could also buy 3 tickets for poorer children from poorer areas. And these went very, very quickly. And people wrote to us and said, do you know, that's a really nice idea. I'm so glad you're doing it. Well, we weren't doing it. They were doing it by paying for the money. But it made the closeness and the proximity. So I would say, absolutely, at the end of the day, yes, you've got to be aware of your finances. You've got to know what the bottom line is, where you can save. You've got to have the information, because they will always think artists have no idea about money. And that's important. It's important that you understand the positive financial impact on your community. But it's also incredibly important that they understand how much you support their aims to make their city, their region successful, and how you have an important role to play in that partnership. We see Janacek Festival brings people from all over the world, and for me, that's a perfect example of the perfect partnership. On that note, I now have to leave you because we're finished with our time. We're actually slightly over 3 o'clock, and I've got to run to get a train to Vienna because I'm going to the opera this evening. So it's been a great joy meeting you all. I can't talk longer, but I've left a little pile of visiting cards, so please take one. If you want to ask any questions, send me an email. Just ask any questions, and if ever you want to come to Magdeburg to visit, I'm only too happy to see you. Just write, JAMU student looking for contact, okay? And thank you all for being a great bunch, and I wish you lots of good luck for the future. So, have a good one.